Hello, people of the internet. Those who are aware and unaware, those who are awake and those who are asleep to who they really are. Come bearing my voice and my energy. May it carry across as it should and as it is allowed. My energy and my presence is here to serve. Last time I did this, I had longer hair. I have a haircut now. Another thing is that I wanted to pick up where I left off in a way to describe the type of people that find that when they have evidence or what they believe is evidence or truth that isn't the same as everyone else's. When they find that when they speak, they feel confident in their ignorance or confident in this being the only way it works. I find that these people have created a understanding that only bridges on how much they can understand at one time. So say somebody is heavily religious. They can have a very different viewpoint on what it means to commit suicide depending on if their family has a history with suicide, or if they know someone who contemplates it, or if they themselves contemplate it. There's several different ways to handle such a subject. However, there will be those who will adamantly stand at the idea that it's the coward's way out, which is never true. It actually takes quite a bit to harm yourself, even just a little bit. There's a certain amount of lackluster and a lack of care towards oneself in order to do something even that minute as injuring yourself on purpose. And as I have found with someone I knew and someone I was with trying to help, more so than be in a relationship with that person, they were unwilling to see themselves as somebody who was worthy of being helped. They doubted ever having a need to love themselves. They would rather see themselves as victim to their entire circumstance and their entire being, rather than take responsibility for themselves. And even when I practice in implant removal and going deeper into people's psyche, because I'm self-taught psychologist in a way, I understand it. I know where it comes from. So I seek to better my understanding in order to find a way to help those who are ineffective at helping themselves. I would rather be the one to aid than be the one to shun anyone, regardless of where they stand, who they are, what they wear, how their body looks, anything. As long as this person is willing to go deeper into themselves to find all the things that they either dislike or the things that they find undesirable in themselves. I have found that many times people will push away the idea that they're even worthy of caring about themselves, which is such a weird thing to think about. It's because they get used to the idea that they're not worth anything. They're not worth the time other people put into them. They're not worth their own time put into them. And even if you disregard the idea that all of this is simulation for your benefit, or all of this is happening for you, not to you, you would have to come to a comfortable place of numb in order to doubt yourself, doubt your importance, because you can never live for someone else. If you tried to live for everything under the sun, you would grow tired weary and probably learn a bit of spite towards other things because you would see them as more important than yourself. And when you do that, you're limiting just how effective you can be as an, because there are plenty of different ways to actually handle oneself when it comes to growing, shaping, relearning, learning, and tutoring oneself in fields in which they feel more comfortable. I mean, we still have a very archaic idea of what it means to actually progress through one's skills, because we still are very title orientated to the point where if somebody says they're a doctor, an archaeologist, or neuroscientist, everything they say all of a sudden is so valuable that even if there's evidence to prove that person wrong later on, they'll refute it because they will cite somebody else in that field who backs what that person says. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling the truth. It doesn't even necessarily mean that they are on your side. There are plenty of different things that would change a perspective, especially when you begin to teach yourself certain things, when you begin to teach yourself how to tap into who you really are, into what you can do. Hence the things like Akashic Records, remote viewing, telekinesis, breathanarians, vegetarians, vegans, people who adamantly have chosen to change their life, but also to change their view. There's a lot of things where there's a lot of inherent value, but a lot of people don't find that value because they don't learn from first-hand experience. They would much rather keep a certain kind of experience and a certain kind of understanding to themselves, to the point where it becomes to the person holding it, to where it's pretty much like poisoned fruit that they're just addicted to because of how sweet it is. And in a lot of ways, even if you were to change your opinion and your point of view, there really is no danger. The only reason why you believe, or if someone else believes that change is something to be feared and something that could possibly end up killing them or other people, is because they don't realize that change is just a necessary part of everything. Seasons change. Time of day changes. The sun changes position. The moon changes position. The moon changes size even. It even changes the way it looks in the sky during certain days, to the point where it's a full moon or it's just completely gone. All these things have a cycle. Everyone has to find their own cycle, as Martin Kenny put it in his, either it's called Discovery, but yeah, Martin Kenny and the Flat Earth Universe. He has some very valid points in his new video that he released, and it makes a lot of sense. If you believe that, yeah, YOLO, you only live once, is a way of saying if you were to do something reckless or stupid, or get drunk, or try every drug under the sun, that gives your life a meaning, because now you have all these experiences to tell someone else, and you have a huge story. Yeah, that may be true. However, what does that do to your story? What does it do to the perspective that you were trying to gain from the beginning? Was it part of your journey? Well, managed to get your hands on every possible drug under the sun and live to tell the tale. It's your journey to be that version of everyone who wants to try something that is dangerous yet exciting, thrilling yet very, very damaging in certain doses to the physical form. Come on. None of that. I apologize. Whenever they see people walking down the street, they lose their heads. Come here, dog. Come here. And as I noticed in my first video sharing vocal energies, I found that my body temperature will get hot, as in I'm embarrassed or flustered. And in a lot of ways, this just helps me get over it because it's a live stream, and frankly, things happen. Life happens. Will you lay down? Get up there. Lay down. Life happens. Everything happens for a reason. So even dogs barking is just helping me get over that nervous feeling. Maybe it's not even mine. Maybe somebody watching this video later on, maybe myself later on, at some point is going to watch this and feel embarrassed by the fact that, you know, there's noise and there's a distraction and a huge pause. But I forgive myself, I bless myself, and I love myself. So, all water off a duck's back, as they say. But yeah, find it very threatening, very dangerous, yet the exciting lifestyle can come to those who are seeking that excitement, and they will find it. They will absolutely find it. Just like those who find trouble will always find trouble. As my teacher put it, Kelly, who's my second teacher when I found my spiritual calling, spiritual path. There's a lot of things that I have come to understand due to her and Ryan Cropper's insights. They've helped along the way, and they've helped me come to a better understanding of what it means to exist here. It's like there will be people who are neutral, as Kenny put it, and there will be people who are either in it for the good or they're in it for the bad. Hence why we can have people who will mislead, guide people down the wrong road intentionally rather than unintentionally. But all these things are for a reason. It's like another thing was playing hide and go seek with your God. Since we're all made in not its image, it would make more sense that even if you're gay, bi, transgender, if you're with same sex, if Adam on Adam or Eve is your thing, it matters. It's all up to you. You see it from your standpoint, which is the good, the neutral, or the bad. Everything in triplets, I guess. The tides, the change, the moral standing. All these things don't change depending on who you are, because it's a core part of your being, such as there are people who will do very terrible things, like mutilate animals or kick a baby. There'd be people who would do all kinds of different things for different reasons. People who talk about it and have a different humor about it, as I do, because frankly, nothing is really serious to me in this life. There are very few things that I take seriously 100% of the time. Because why be serious about it all? That's just taking in unnecessary emotions. That's adjusting yourself and finding something in nothing. Because if you're capable of understanding the fact that you are everything and everything exists for your benefit, then there's nothing to actually get mad about, is there? Everything that's in your life is there for a reason. Everything you do is temporary at best, but also leading you somewhere. So that's not all that bad. Like, I've had an experience of sleeping on the couch in my old place, Uh, and I woke up at random in the middle of the night, and I had no idea where I was, who I was, what I was doing, or anything. So all those movies that show amnesia as this, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Um, that's not really what goes through your head, at least in my experience. In my experience, what went through my head was, what? Just what? What is this? Is the idea that came into my mind. And I like almost verbalized it, and I was just completely out of it. I wasn't me, I wasn't the neighbor, I wasn't the cat sleeping on the floor. I was me, but in a amnesia state. So I had no idea what I was doing, why I was doing anything, but just what came to mind. What is this? So amnesia would probably work that way. The thoughts would be there, but you wouldn't necessarily want to vocalize them. But I guess if you saw humanity as a giant culmination of people with amnesia, then you would be right, because what kind of life do you come into where if you tried to think back as to why this is all important, you might get hit with a huge amount of confusion and disillusion at the same time? Because that's what I experienced. When I was a wee lad, I was laying in my bed in a place we were renting in a city not too far from here. And I was laying there, and for some calling to question everything, and I just started asking why. Why? 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 Why am I here? Why was I born? To what point is all of this existence to me? Why am I born in this body? Why am I born at all? Why am I in this life? Why am I getting to see my parents struggle? Why am I here to be bullied? Why am I here? Just why? Just a consistent flood of whys. To the point where I near about blacked out. Tunnel vision, actually. And it scared me so bad when I was younger, and I guess I still carry that around with me, is that fear that if I started asking all the right questions and really got to know who I was, what would happen? Would I die? Would my mission here be complete? Because I actually learned that why is a very good question to ask, especially when you're confused. So I've been met with that kind of fear that if I were to know exactly what I'm capable of, who I am, what I can do, would I die? Would that be the end? And coupling that with my acid trip made it even more terrifying, because it showcased that I was one with everyone except there was a trio. The trio of beings: myself, the person who's supplied by the name of Clifford. I can give his name. Nobody's really gonna know who he is anyway. Clifford and his lady, whom I don't remember the name of at all. I saw them as extensions of myself, but I also saw them as ones who are punishing me and torturing me in a certain state of fear, like they could pull the trigger on me at any moment and my entire reality would just slip away from me. I saw my Jeep fall into the void, get torn apart, become a black dot or black space where nothing exists. I saw all around me lights going off, bombs going off, a helicopter firing down on me, what felt like buckshot in my gut, and a bleeding sensation, which didn't help because I visualized it and saw it in its entirety as blood on the ground, on my hands, coming from my gut, that the whole world is just gonna collapse around me. The reality that I built around me the moment I figure it all out is just going to implode on itself, and then it all comes back and I get to start all over again. So, in a lot of ways, it was like a dream, because my greatest fear was losing the one person that I found truly understands me, even though I have never met her, and she is so, so important to me on a level that I just know. I've got nothing to explain it. I've got nothing to really title what it is. It's just a knowing, a deep, deep knowing. I've known this person for a long time, that I know that this person will grow with me and help me in ways that I fear I would never be able to help myself. Even though I've self-taught myself all kinds of things. I've been homeless. I've strived to be, know I need to be in order to progress past this life, because for a long time I felt so much suffering and I had no idea where it came from until a while ago. I found out where it was coming from, and yeah, even though you may never know what your past life was, it's a good idea to know what it was so that you can understand where certain things stem from. And even if I was a cruel ruler in the past, or was in a position in which I was tortured, I can choose exactly how I'm going to continue my life past that moment. And I choose to experience everything from a place of excitement and joy, love, unconditional love towards it all, because that's more reasonable to me than constantly being afraid that the world is going to unravel and everything's going to implode. That's like the idea that everyone has when it comes to an apocalypse or ships coming out of the sky. Oh, this is all gonna come undone, and then we're all gonna be saved, or we're all gonna be doomed, or cast into hell. It's like it all just comes around full circle. The idea that people aren't willing to change, because so long as you believe that that's all that's waiting for you, and that's it, all you're doing is believing, you don't have any real proof, you just, in a way, there's a knowing that you have, but it's tainted. Something about your knowing isn't quite clear, but you're holding on to it adamantly because logic dictates. Well, during that acid trip, logic dictated that I was the only being in existence. Everything around me, it was a disaster waiting to happen, and I was solely to blame because I myself am the being that exists here. Because of me, there is suffering, there is pain, and there is agony, which I've never heard anyone else have a trip like that, but I guess I just got it from everywhere else around me, and inside there was a part of me that still felt like I was suffering, and I don't know the way I was just confused, because it was shortly after I was homeless, and when I was homeless I was able to go, I was able to do, I was able to manifest, I was able to just go, because all I felt was spirit, all I felt was me, the internal imagination, the creator, the very being that I am, and that everyone is, even the people who straddle the fence as neutral beings, even those who are in the bad or in the good, they know exactly where things come from when they really stop and question things. It's so easy in a way. It's so simple, and yet it's made so complicated. But it's a simple thing. Everything in life is simple when you take away all the complex symptoms of the simplicity. Because there's a duality, and that duality will constantly exist, so it's alright to accept the good and the bad, as well as everything in between. because frankly, it's all you experiencing yourself so that you could teach yourself deeper meanings of existence rather than just create things and destroy things and live an ambiguous life of or existence of just being neutral. Just think about it. What truly makes God or the devil what they are in text? They're the protagonist and the antagonist. And then humanity's supposed to be the middle. They're supposed to straddle the middle where they either choose to never question anything, which doesn't sound quite right for a loving God, but okay, or to find curiosities and play God, which leads you into hell. Same with good intentions, it leads you into hell. So it's a very blurry line because everyone's going to be curious. Don't look up, stare at the ground, be feeble, be low, be lowly in yourself, be humble. Humble makes sense. Humility makes sense. But not to an extent in which you're willing to give up everything if a voice in your head tells you to. Because there is also the implication of things that aren't so great, which are those people who get that voice in their head that tells them to kill themselves if they don't do as the voice tells them. So, even with all this proof, there are still people who doubt that there's something more going on, that they're willing to fight an idea because they believe they are correct or they have been told that this is correct. Nothing in school that I learned is correct. It's like if Abraham Lincoln were black, that would make sense. They would choose to cover that up in history, but hey, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I'm never going to defend something that I was never there to actually see it with these physical eyes anyway. If I can remote view it, I'll remote view it. See exactly what's going on there. See exactly what the truth is. Because if you really think about it, everyone's in their own space, in their own bubble, as my friend put it. David, very nice. Everyone's in their own bubble. They're in their own sphere. They're going to see things their way, and they're going to see things differently from the person next to them. They're going to have a completely different set of emotions and thoughts and physical reactions to pretty much everything that will happen around them. Hence the idea of different bubbles, because bubbles, they sort of interact and they can overlay on top of each other. I mean, there was, I think it's called The Source on Netflix. Yeah, I think it's called The Source. I don't know. I'm not going to look it up either. But there is a... Yeah, I think it is called The Source. But it is a video or a series of hour-long videos where they talk about exactly the mathematical probability of life and all types of things, like to the variations of fish, to the construction of a very well-known structure, to also just physics. Physics and math. If you're into that kind of thing and you want it very simple, that one actually does a pretty good job of making it simple for everyone. So, yeah. But there are a lot of things. Life is mathematically sound. And the whole idea of if you take string theory all the way down to its most base, it revolves into, or devolves into zeros and ones, which would indicate that life is nothing more than a simulation, that every fiber of its being, since the idea of if you're not around to experience something, it didn't exist or it didn't happen. Like a tree falling in a forest and no one's around to hear it, never happened. That's the actual answer to that riddle, that question, that impossible question. If no one was around to hear a tree fall, does it still make a sound? No. the entire process of it falling never happened. Yes, the details and the landscape would suggest that it had fallen, and fall it would have made noise, but no one was around to see it, so it doesn't exist. And it's like looking at base particles. I think it's atoms or something. It rearranges every time you look at it through a microscope. I don't remember all these things as clearly as I probably should, but hey, I'll come across that information myself. And then how you talk to water when it's combined with rice will alter how it looks and how it functions and all that good stuff. If you ignore it, it'll do its base thing, but if it noticed that you were talking to the other two, it would rot and grow all nasty, even worse than it getting negative attention. So, yeah. So there's a lot of proof to show that life isn't exactly what you think it is, and it's all up to you to decipher exactly what life is, because frankly it's not something you can take seriously, but it's also something you don't necessarily need to force onto other people when you have no idea on how to come across. Because yes, you can drop nuggets of wisdom for other people who have the ideas and the mental process to see only one side of the argument, and that's it. They only see their view, and they keep to a certain mindset about how to address new query into insights that they may gain from someone who's willing to talk to them on a intellectual, emotional, or through action, artistic rendering of their information. So yes, those who are waking up, or those who wish to challenge their neutrality by finding something that helps them lean one way more than the other, then you'll find your way here. You'll find your way to one of the other teachers. You'll find your way eventually. You're going to find exactly what you're looking for. I already feel it. I feel it in myself. And yeah, everyone is welcome to my energy so long as you know that I'll only give you what you need versus what you want. Yeah. Because I already put in a lot of intent for my own bubble self, the overseer of my bubble, to influence exactly how much interaction I have between myself and the world around me, and I mainly intend to have it only allow positive to affect me, for positive to come in, for things to, even if they're of neutral value or entity, even if it's a neutral entity, for them to only allow the good for my good. My good. That's very important to state. My good. To affect me. To allow me to grow. Because even now, as I talk in front of this camera to myself, because that's the one I can see, I feel more mature. I feel like there's a certain part of me who's getting exactly the experience that it needs in order to push the envelope a bit, to teach other people. Because even if somebody's in a neutral space, you can actually find on neutral ground, which I've learned to do because I've also been attempting to help other people, because I have all these tools, all these techniques, all this desire, all this burning joy in the idea of bringing it to someone else's attention and really helping them to overcome themselves, overcome the cumbersome of the logical mind, the logical form that dictates pattern and dictates that this physical form is all you got, because you feel pain, you feel agony, and you can't escape it. You're going to be here in this body, as far as you know, up until you die. And death is this very scary thing. Just like negative things are a very scary thing, hateful things, and all those things that make people kind of queasy when they really stop to think about how humanity, from a certain standpoint, is overly generous during times of crisis. They will stand up for each other. They will house random strangers. They'll feed them. They'll clothe them. They'll give them water. They'll tend to their needs because, in the end, we may be all in our own bubbles, but even bubbles are able to come together and create something beautiful, such as a pattern or geometry that would dictate a better way of thinking, a better way of processing information, and they don't take up more space than they need. Bubbles are flexible to the point where they never have to over encumber anything in their surrounding. They just merge with it. And in that show, The Source, it is implied that nature is lazy, that it takes the easy way out, and that would mean that even things that are complicated in our lives, it's actually made out of very simple shapes. Like one of the things that was done in that specific episode, I think, with the bubbles, was how designers actually were able to make mountains that look realistic. And the person who actually found out how to do it, he was overlaying triangles and just making triangles on top of triangles on top of triangles. Just let the algorithm run wild, and it made a mountain range that looked realistic into the real thing. So when you see a mountain range or something super majestic, just know that nature was super lazy and just overlaid triangles on top of each other. Or circles or squares, so some basic shape. But I think that makes it even more enjoyable to think about. It doesn't take away from the beauty of life, because even if you think about it now, there are a lot of things that are super simple if you really think about it, but they look so complicated. Just life in general, I guess. It has a certain amount of beauty to it. At least from my standpoint, anyway. But yeah, my last video was 35 minutes. This one's nearing about 40. I just think I can still talk about a few more things. Like peering into someone's soul or spirit windows, which would be the eyes. I found that locking eyes with specific people creates a certain kind of sensation to where you can really see into that person. I think I've only seen somebody's inner child once. Well, I've actually seen it a few times, but one time by locking eyes with someone. And that was actually pretty interesting, because the person I locked eyes with is heavily skeptical. He says he's open-minded, but he also says he's skeptical. So, an open-minded skepticism, which is a very good way about going with everything, because you should have your own level of discernment. What gives you goosebumps, what really riles you up in a certain kind of way that kind of excites you, but it also makes you kind of nervous, because it's a little too unnerving that this person is syncing with you so well. That kind of way. And the information seems to be undeniable due to the shivers, so there's that too. So when I convey all this information in front of this camera, I'm also conveying it to myself, more so than anything, because I'm the one who has to sort all this out, but I'm also the one who is drawn to speak to other people, talk, communicate, work with other people in order to get past these mental demons that we have created for ourselves, and all these blocks that we've more so just stacked on top of each other and just forgot that we could ever create, because all we are is just overgrown children in big bodies, large spacious minds, and a vast imagination that we have been told is obsolete and unnecessary after you reach a certain age. But you never really escaped that age, did you? If everything was an overlaid image to the point where your true self was always a child, would you actually recognize that, or would you ignore that entirely? Because there are things that I've seen adults flip out over that seems absolutely childish, and the way that they flip out is childish. Yelling, shouting, getting irate, and throwing a temper tantrum. All these things adults still do, so technically I never quite stopped being a child. In a sense, anyway. So, YouTube, the biggest place where egos can flourish, but also truth, in a sense, can also flourish. I am a seeker of truth. In my own way, I venture to and... What is that phrase? To and forth? To and forth from being at the lows of lows to the highest of highs. As I've said to someone else. My friend Paris. He's a good guy. Should definitely look him up. He's interesting. He is a channeler. He channels the Prince of Shambhala, because he is a reincarnation of the Prince. He's also the one who told me that I was a reincarnation of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Because he can see when he chooses to see. He could be super spiritual when he chooses to be super spiritual. He could be very caught up in the physical world if he chooses to be very caught up in the physical world. A man of many talents and many learnings, both physical and non-physical. Though most of his game is mainly physical.